Now the pitch on the way, swung on, driven to the air to right center field. Back goes Tao again, looking up, going, goodbye! Another home run for C.J. Abrams. Bang, zoom, he does it again, number 27. He's driven in 3 in the game. And he's given the Nationals the lead with 4 runs home here in the bottom of the 5th inning. It's now the Nationals 6, the Diamondbacks 4. Unbelievable.
Charlie Slows on the radio call yesterday on our sister station, 106.7 The Fan. C.J. Abrams is on a run right now that should legitimately put him into the MVP conversation. Now, he's not going to win the MVP because Shohei Ohtani is in the National League and a couple of others. But he and James Wood are certainly odds-wise right now in the top 8 in the National League. How about this for C.J. Abrams, Max? Over his last 39 at-bats, which covers 10 games. 19 hits in his last 39 at-bats. 7 home runs in his last 39 at-bats, and 15 RBIs in his last 39 at-bats. He's hitting nearly 500. He's hitting nearly 400 for the month of July. The Nats beat the Diamondbacks 10-7. Held on, actually, for dear life in the 9th inning as the bullpen got a bit shaky in the 9th. But they took 2 of 3 from Arizona for their 3rd straight series win coming out of the All-Star break. They are currently 1 game out of the National League's 3rd and final wild card spot. Good morning, everybody. Hope your weekend went well. Training camp welcomes veterans to Ashburn tomorrow. First practice Wednesday this week. There will be plenty to decipher and pick through as Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, and I'm sure Jaden Daniels are expected to speak this week as training camp gets underway. A little bit of news over the weekend. Ben will jump on with us at 12, and we'll talk about that. A little bit of news this morning, coaching staff related. Ben will share that with us at 12. Think about an answer to the following question. The following question is, Washington's 2026 season will be defined as successful if, I need an answer to that, fill in the blank. Washington's 2026 season will be defined as successful if, I'll give you my answer, thought a lot about it. Max will give you his. We'll get to that coming up. Washington's 2026 season will be defined as successful if, some of you will say, if they go to the Super Bowl. I don't know if that's realistic, but it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. So the Nats took 2 of 3 from Arizona, the team that was red hot coming in. The Diamondbacks had won 9 of 11 coming into this series in Washington over the weekend. They took the game Friday night 3-2. And then the Nats rallied on Saturday for a 5-3 win, and then rallied yesterday to win 10-7 with C.J. Abrams and James Wood going nuts yesterday, both with 2 home runs in the game. James Wood now with 30 homers on the season, 72 RBIs, and C.J. Abrams, again, just on an insane tear. He's up to 27 home runs, and he leads the major leagues in RBIs with 82 on the season. He's approaching 300 now, hitting 297, but literally his batting average to start the month was at 273. He's now at 297, hitting 397 during the month of July. The Nats climbed closer to that wild card spot. They did make a trade over the weekend. They sent Curtis Mead to Boston for a left-handed starter in Connerly Early, who's actually hurt right now, inflammation in his elbow. But the baseball people seem to really like the trade for the Nationals. The Nationals have so much offense, so the idea is even though Meade was having a career year, they're going to be okay offensively without him. And they just added a legitimate starter to the rotation for later in the season when he is expected to be back. So we will see. Connor Early is just 24 years old, and added to a rotation with Foster Griffin, fingers crossed he's still on the roster when we get to the latter portion of the season, and Cade Cavalli could make for, along with that offense, a dangerous postseason team. It's not nuts. By the way, Foster Griffin pitched on Saturday, pitched well, but his 8-game streak of allowing just 1 earned run or less came to an end. He gave up 3 earned runs on Saturday, but still went 6 2/3, went in deep into the 7th, allowed just those 3 earned runs on 6 hits. So a solid outing for Foster Griffin on Saturday, and he got the win. He's now 12-2 on the season, but a lot of talk about Foster Griffin and whether or not he will be dealt by the time we get to early next week and the trade deadline, which is August 3rd, exactly a week from today. We'll see what the Nats do. I think this is a big week coming up. You know, if they continue to play really good baseball, they've got Toronto here for the next 3 at home starting tonight. Toronto's not played well recently. They've dropped something like 8 out of their last 11. They're in last place in the American League East. This will offer up an opportunity for Cade Cavalli to start one of these games. You got to come away with 2 of 3 against Toronto to win a 4th straight series out of the All-Star break. It would be great to get a sweep, obviously, but then a big stretch of 4 on the road in Atlanta, which will actually end the day before the trade deadline, and then they start a 4-game set in Philadelphia after that. So keeping the momentum, keeping a couple of games above 500, no worse than 2-3 games out of that wild card race, hopefully will keep the powers that be from becoming major sellers. Any sort of tailspin over the next week where they drop to 5-6 games out of the wild card spot and under 500 could be influential. I don't see that happening, but this is no longer, by the way, clearly no longer aberration. They played 106 games. There are only 56 left, and the Nats are the highest scoring team in baseball, and they've gotten solid starting pitching as well. The bullpen's been the major issue this year. The bullpen actually did a nice job on Saturday. Yesterday got a little bit close in the ninth. The Diamondbacks went into the ninth inning trailing by 5 runs, 10-5, and they had 2 batters up, 1 swing away from taking the lead when the Nats walked the first 3 batters in the top of the ninth. But wow, what a season this has been, and it would be great if it continues. I got this from P. Jones 19. P. Jones 19 listens to the radio show and the podcast because he wrote, Kevin, you and Tom, as in Lavero, talking Nats all of a sudden after nothing for most of the season is laugh out loud. You made your bed with Brandon Ayuk. Now lie in it. So I don't know if he's kidding or not. If he's not kidding, it's kind of a ridiculous position to take. Let me just mention this. I would prefer to talk about baseball during the spring, summer, and into the fall a lot more than is done. But when your team for 5 consecutive years averages 96 plus losses a season and has among the worst sort of response from fans in the market, attendance-wise, and every other metric that would measure fan response, it's not an easy ask to do it all the time. We do it, and I like to do it. I like to have Mark Zuckerman on the show. I like to have Jesse Doherty on the show. I like to have Grant Paulson on the show to talk baseball, Galdi on the show to talk baseball. I've got a Hall of Fame voter in Tommy Lavero on my podcast twice a week, and we talk baseball. But when you're averaging, P. Jones 19, no offense, 96 plus losses a year, and you're literally in a position where you're not just bad, you are one of, if not the worst teams in baseball. It's tough, especially in a sports town that has one dominant team. And his note to me just reminded me of kind of, I think we all understand this, and we're not unique. We're not unique. There are a couple of incredible sports cities like New York and Philly, and certainly Boston and Chicago, and Detroit to a certain degree. LA is an interesting sports town, but still the Lakers are the dominant team there, but they have a big fan base for the Dodgers as well. But we are a one-team dominant sports town. There's just no debating that. And anybody that wants to debate you on that doesn't understand what the measurement of that would look like. I mean, there is mass appeal for our football team. There is bandwagon appeal for everything else. It's just the way our sports town has evolved. I think you could make the case that it hasn't always been that way, but it has to a certain degree. Look, the Capitals have a very passionate fan base, but it's not mass appeal like the football team. I think the Wizards could end up having something other than a bandwagon fan base if they actually became a contending team for the first time in a half century. But it's been a half century. Our baseball team has right now the third worst attendance numbers in the National League, even with a very unexpected, healthy, surprising season. It's the 8th worst in all of baseball, attendance-wise. It's not, but if they are in contention and there's all of a sudden playoff games in October, people will jump on that bandwagon. It's really what we've become. The two college basketball teams in town, Maryland basketball has had in the past a very consistent, passionate fan base, but even that has waned in recent years and is more bandwagony. Georgetown certainly is that. Maryland football, I don't even know what you would call that. There's legitimately no current, palpable, measurable fan base that exists for the football program. Now, in the past, when Maryland's had good teams, and you got to go back a long way, even though Mike Loxley did a really nice job with 3 straight bowl teams, but these weren't teams that were contending for anything. They weren't, necessarily ranked higher consistently. I've seen the bandwagon jump on for that. Would it do it now in 2026 like it did it in the 2000s with some of Ralph Regent's teams? I don't know. Bandwagony at best for them. But anyway, P. Jones 19, appreciate the fact that you appreciate that we are talking some baseball, and I'm into it. I like baseball a lot. I love it this time of year going into the postseason. And this season, for a while, like you go back to, one point in the first half of the season when they first started to sort of approach 500 and we were 50 or 60 games in. And then all of a sudden they were like 4 or 5 games above 500. And then they had some real devastating, defeats, that Philly series, the San Francisco series where they were giving up, late leads. There were certainly some of those moments, but this team is sitting here 106 games into the season at 54-52 and a game behind the team they just took 2 of 3 from. They win the season series. So if we end up getting into any sort of tiebreakers late in the year, they own the tiebreaker over Arizona now with the season series win. But at 54-52, 106 games into the season with the offense they have, I don't think they're going away. The only way they go away is if they trade away, all of these important parts. I don't think that's going to happen, but it'll be a very interesting week this week. Toronto tonight, and then for the next 2 days before a big 8-game stretch against the 2 top teams in the division. By the way, I keep talking about the wild card race with them just a game behind Arizona for the third wild card race. They're only 3 games behind Philly for the second wild card spot. And right now, most of the other teams are behind them. They and Pittsburgh are sitting a game out. This is going to be a really interesting race. The Nats just don't have many nights where they're not hitting. I mean, 15 more hits last night, 10 more runs. They had a game last week against Oakland, against the A's in Sacramento, where they only ended up with a run in the game on 4 hits. That is such an aberration these days. I mean, they are, they have a very, very difficult lineup for opposing pitchers to face. All right. So over the weekend, there was some really interesting NFL news, right? The Kyle Shanahan accident, a little bit strange, right? That this was 11 days before it was reported about Kyle Shanahan's very significant car crash in which he was injured. He is recovering well, but he's not ready for the beginning of their training camp. But it was quite the list of injuries. He broke his nose. He broke 3 ribs. He broke his hand. He needed over 40 stitches in his face, and he suffered a severe concussion when his vehicle collided with an SUV not far from his home. John Lynch, the general manager, said that Kyle is recovering, but he's kind of in that concussion protocol. He's not coming back to work until that clears, and he passes some of that concussion protocol. I mean, thank God that he is alive and recovering and well. All best wishes go out to him. Of course, I know his father obviously very well. I was texting back and forth with Mike just a week ago, literally a week ago. So obviously he knew about this accident. He didn't say anything. And am I interested in why for 11 days, apparently many in the media in the Bay Area knew that he was involved in a car accident and didn't report it? Yeah, I think it's interesting, but I don't have all of the detail. And some of the Bay Area reporters are saying, look, they knew he was in an accident, but they did not know the severity of it. They didn't know that he was going to miss training camp. So it was not necessarily something they chased down. And at the same time, there doesn't seem to be anything involved in the accident that would lead anybody to believe that there was, any sort of suspicion in how the accident happened. There were no charges. Everybody was cleared of any sort of alcohol-related impact on the accident. So we'll see. But best wishes to Kyle for a speedy recovery. Chris Forster, who's been with the Shanahans for years, their assistant head coach, offensive line coach, he's been in a lot of places. He's taking over to run their practices here early in camp. Meantime, John Lynch was asked, a bunch about Brandon Ayuk in that first opening press conference for the 49ers training camp. If you don't know what he said, we'll tell you what he said when we come back. And again, I want you to think about, because we're going to open up phone lines in a bit, on what 2026 would be defined as successful based on. All right, 2026 would be defined as a successful season if fill in the blank. This is a big season. It's an important season. The expectations are not where they were a year ago, but the expectations are high enough where there's some pressure out there on people to perform and deliver something. What is that something? What is that something that would say the season was successful? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
I know you wanted to avoid Brandon Ayuk questions, but as a reporter, I'm obligated to ask you a couple. Is the intention to keep Ayuk on that reserve left squad list, A, and then B, you guys are playing the Commanders in week 6. He's been adamant that he's going at some point to join the Commanders. Is this part of your calculus that you're not just going to release a guy so that he winds up on an opponent's roster?
Matt, I understand you got to do your job. I understand. But, as I said at the start, he's on that list. That means he's not on our roster. And I'm going to focus on the guys that are and stand by what we've said already.
It was John Lynch, the 49ers general manager. He was asked prior to that, and he said exactly the same thing. He's on the left squad list. He's not a part of our 90-man roster, and we're going to focus on the people who are part of the 90-man roster. If he wants to be a part of the 90-man roster, he actually has to take some action. He has to apply for league reinstatement. He's got to be reinstated, and then he's got to show up. Because if he doesn't show up, then he's still on a list or can be put right back onto a list for left squad designation. It's becoming more and more obvious with training camp now underway in San Francisco that the chances are greater that he's not going to report to 49ers camp. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a surprise on that. There's some other news here this morning from around the league, and this one's troubling, and hopefully it will be all's well that ends well. But the wife of Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator here in 2023, she was shot last night at the couple's home that they still have in Northern Virginia, near Ashburn in Loudoun County. According to sources, Mia Bieniemy, Mia is his wife, has been hospitalized. The police in Loudoun County, Virginia, confirmed that a person was being treated for serious injuries, but did not disclose the person's identity, but it is believed to be her. Eric Bieniemy was with the Chiefs in St. Joe's, Missouri, where their training camp is underway. Loudoun County Sheriff's Office spokesperson Leah Powell said early this morning that police responded to a report of a shooting at a home located in Ashburn, Virginia. The Chiefs said in a statement they are aware of the incident involving Eric Bieniemy's family, but did not provide further details. So prayers up for Mia Bieniemy and whatever that was about. The other thing is Washington this morning announced that they have parted ways with tight ends coach Ben Steele. The team said that it will have no further comment at this time. Any move involving a member of the staff would lead to questions about the timing, etc. But the team says no further comment on Ben Steele at this time. He was hired this past offseason, spent the last 3 years as the Cardinals tight ends coach, and has also worked in Denver, Minnesota, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay during the course of his career. We will certainly talk to Ben about that when he jumps on with us a little bit later on in the show. Also, Mike Lombardi, who was the big hire for Belichick down in North Carolina in Chapel Hill when he took the job. Lombardi, former NFL GM, was also to be sort of the North Carolina football GM. He's been let go or he's been put on leave with no explanation at this point. North Carolina will be the first team to play college football this year. They'll do it in Dublin against TCU. All right. Washington's 2026 season will be defined as successful if, I want you to fill in the blanks. All right. I want to hear from you as to what you will call the upcoming season as successful. I'm going to give you my answer right now, and it's really two things that will define success for the upcoming season. Number one is they go to the playoffs. That's it. They go to the playoffs. I'm not going to ask for playoff wins or a playoff win. They go to the playoffs is part one for me in defining the upcoming season as successful. But part two is important, almost as important. And I think they go hand in hand. But part two for me is that Jaden Daniels has a great season. It's a season in which he is healthy throughout. And at the end of it, there's no doubt in any of our minds that he's exactly who we thought he would be at the end of his rookie season. That will define successful season for me. They go to the playoffs, and Jaden Daniels has a great season, one that is really defined in that one subset of the big definition as healthy throughout, and we get to the end of the season, and it's like, yeah, he's elite. He's exactly what we thought he would be at the end of his rookie season. I mean, I would assume that if he has a great season and if they go to the playoffs, that they got some help and they got some improvement from their defense. I didn't include that in the definition, but going to the playoffs, it's somewhat implied that they weren't the worst defensive team in the NFL as they were over the last third to half of the season last year. Yes, Jaden and the offense carried them to not only the playoffs in 2024, but to 2 playoff wins. The defense wasn't very good, but the defense in 2024 was slightly better than the defense last year. And I'm certainly understanding that the defense lost a lot of its key players like the offense did last year to injury. But my projection is even if they had been healthy defensively, it was not going to be a very good defense at all. So my definition of 2026 Washington success, they go to the playoffs, and then Jaden Daniels has a great season, which is marked by a healthy season throughout and one in which it's so obvious at the end of the year that he's exactly who many of us thought he would be at the end of his rookie season, at the end of year 3. Max, do you have a definition for success in 2026?
So I did want to, I'm kind of echoing a lot of the things that you said, but for me, success is Jaden being healthy all season. I have no doubt that he will leave no doubt as to who we think that he is. But I need him to play at least 15 of the 17 games this year. Whether that's, through injury or whatever, I just need him to be present and be playing. 10 wins preferably. And yeah, I would say top 2 in the division or playoff bound, one of the two. That would define success for me.
Because you answered the question first, Jaden just being healthy all season long. You're adding a couple of pieces to it. So what are the pieces? Playoffs?
10 wins.
Top 2 in the division?
Yeah, playoffs, 10 wins.
Minimum.
That would be it. If you make the playoffs, but 10 wins would be preferable. I want them to be a higher seeded team in the playoffs. I want a whole playoff game. Would you rather them have 10
wins and not make the playoffs or 9 wins and make the playoffs?
9 wins make the playoffs.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I just want them to be frisky. I want them to be fun. I want them to be competitive. I'm really excited to see how Blau's offense comes together. And I honestly, I think it's going to take the league by storm, but we'll see.
All right. Look, this doesn't have to be just one thing. I gave you 2 things. Max gave you 2 things. All right. Washington's 2026 upcoming season will be defined as successful for you if, and you can list one thing, you can list a couple of things. For me, they go to the playoffs. Number 2, Jaden has a great season, which is marked by health throughout, and just without giving you numbers, without quantifying it, it's the, you know it when you see it. At the end of the year, it was like, yeah, he's the guy that we thought he would be at the end of his rookie year. He's that guy. And by the way, after 3 years, advanced even beyond what that guy was at the end of his rookie season, even though it seems kind of hard to come up with a lot of things that he needed to improve upon after his rookie year. All right, 301. 230-0980, 301-230-0980. The answer to the following sentence that you're going to complete, which is Washington's 2026 season will be defined as successful if ... Fill in the blank. 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com. Washington's 2026 season will be defined as successful in your mind if fill in the blank. For me, number one, they go to the playoffs. All right. I'm not telling you that I can't call it successful if they get to the playoffs and they don't win a game. But number two is Jaden Daniels has a great season, one in which he is healthy throughout. And at the end of it, we won't need numbers to say what we said, or most of us said at the end of his rookie year. Yeah, he's exactly who we thought he was. He is an elite level franchise quarterback. Because here's the thing. If we get to the end of the season and let's say 9-8 or 10-7, but they're in the playoffs and he has a great year and he's healthy. Okay, even if they were to lose that first playoff game, is let's just say a 6 seed on the road against a 3rd-seeded Green Bay team at Lambeau, just throwing it out. All right. We still would have in 3 years 2 playoff seasons. We would know that we have an elite level franchise quarterback. The only reason they didn't make it 3 straight years is the elite level franchise quarterback and everything around him was injured in a weird, off the charts aberration injury season. And it would just be a great spot to be in, knowing that they've got cap space, they've got picks, and they can continue to improve the roster heading into 2027. Of course, they're going to have to pay him. And then another swing at it in 2028. And they're becoming like one of these teams where the expectation is he's great, team around him getting better. If it gets a lot better, they're going to be more than just a playoff team. That's my definition. Max, JD's healthy all season long, and they win 10 games minimum. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Washington's 2026 NFL season will be successful in your mind if what happens? Let's start with Anthony. Anthony, go ahead.
Good morning, Kevin. Thanks for taking my phone call.
Sure, Anthony.
Not only qualifying for the playoffs, but for me, winning at least one playoff game, and I'm allowed a number 2. Jaden has to remain injury-free.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think in so many ways, and we said this about his rookie year, and I know this is year 3, but coming off last season, there's just this feeling like I want to get to the end of 2026 and have a guy that played 17 regular season games and at least one playoff game, was healthy throughout, and was great throughout. Look, if he's as great as he was his rookie year, they'll probably win a playoff game. You know, I don't have to say just just make the playoffs. It's not that I don't want them to win playoff games, but they'll probably have a chance to win a playoff game or 2. But getting to the end of year 3 with 2 playoff seasons with, at that point, a real recognition that as long as he's upright, we've got an elite level quarterback. It's a good position to be in going forward. This franchise hasn't been one of those perennial good football teams since legitimately Joe Gibbs 1.0. They haven't been that, and they've got a chance to become that. They've got a chance to be, not just the team that has the 1-year aberration good season, which I used to define when I would say about our team, any NFL team can have a good season. It does not make that team a good franchise. But if you have 2 playoff seasons and a franchise quarterback in 3 years, you're now becoming a good franchise. That's what we want. We want year in and year out competitive teams that can actually be playoff bound and win it at some point. Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it. Let's go to Joe in Westminster. Joe, go ahead.
I'm
Joe.
looking at they need to. Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
I got you. Yep.
Yep. Hi. Sorry, I'll take you off speaker there. The reason, or I think that the only way they're successful, based on 24, is they have to at least win a playoff game. And if they win a playoff game, then we know that Jaden had a good season. The defense played well. The receivers were enough to get the job done.
Remember, they won 2 playoff games 2 years ago with a bad defense, and without a second or a third obvious star receiver. I hear you. Look, playoff, when you get into the one and done, anything can happen. Like I want a good season with a really good quarterback and have it result in them having, a game at least for one more week after the regular season ends. But I understand that if we get to the end and he's had a great season and they won 10 games, even if they lose at Lambeau in overtime, that the arrow is pointing upward for the following season and the seasons ahead, that they are now becoming a franchise that is legitimately a playoff contender year in and year out as long as he's on the field. I feel that way already, but I want to see it in 2026. Thank you, Joe.
I don't disagree with that. Can I be uncoachable for a second and ask a question about baseball?
Sure.
So you had said, hey, we don't cover the team because they're not that good, et cetera.
I didn't say that.
Baseball is my what you were talking about. I'm trying to paraphrase quickly. But do you think that sometimes that's a chicken and egg kind of thing? Because I get a lot of Baltimore sports radio, and they talk an awful lot about a terrible Orioles team day in and day out.
That's because it's been a part of the fabric of that city for, decades and decades and decades. So,
right, but don't you think it would become more of a fabric of our city if, and I'm not pointing fingers.
Joe, nobody goes to the games.
Radio spoke a little bit more.
So you think more discussion on Sports Talk Radio or more columns written about it is going to drive attendance? My point is that we are like
Orioles games either.
Well, I understand that. And so maybe Baltimore is now a bandwagon town as well. Look, a lot of cities have become one team dominant with everybody else being, you better win big. And for it to pay off from a revenue standpoint for the team, you better win early. It better not be a late run because you've then spent the bulk of your season without having much hope. So that's all. That's what our city is. I feel very confident in saying we are a one-team dominant city. Every other team has to win and win big to draw any sort of audience. And I don't think any media-driven forcing of that square peg into a round hole would help. In fact, it would actually make those that do it unsuccessful. But thank you for that. Jonesy, go ahead.
Good morning, Kevin. Hey, look, I'm going to be as coachable as I can. Look, as far as to go with those two teams there, I mean, especially at the Nationals, it's about the owners. If you listen to the words and the whispers in the streets, spend some money, boom, the people will come. Enough said with that. Now, to top off the question that you asked, I'm going to say the team will be definitely successful if these two, along with Jaden being healthy, if the two rookie coordinators put the players in position to be successful, to at least win over at least 85% of their schedule. We'll go to the playoffs, and we might even end back up inside the championship, and who knows from there. But that's what I have to say on that.
Wait, say that again. I am sorry. I want to hear what you just said again.
Right. If both rookie coordinators can put the players in position to be successful, to win over at least 85% of the schedule of the teams that we play is coming up.
So that means you need them to win close to 15 games this year out of 17. 14 to 15 games.
As close as possible.
That's a lot of wins.
That many games.
It's a lot of wins, Jonesy. You know that, right?
And I know I'm asking a lot, but if those rookie coordinators come in and put the players in position to be successful, at least I say win another 12 games. Yes, we will be
that's
going
not
to the
85%. Okay, so you want good coordinators, and hopefully they hired the right guys, and you want it to result in them winning at least 12 games. That's a little bit more, I think, within reason in terms of a definition of a successful season. If you need between 14 and 15 wins for the season to be successful, man, you're tough. That's a high bar. I don't blame you for it. I'm not criticizing you for it. It's whatever you want it to be. But that you're going to likely be disappointed even if they have a really good season.
Well, okay, trust me, if they go to the playoffs and they won 9 games, and if you end up in the in the championship series, trust and believe, I'm that number one guy screaming and hollering. So yeah, but Jayden has to be also healthy. That's the number one right there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the call, Jonesy. Let's go to Jason and Laurel. Jason, what will define a successful 2026 season?
Hey, Coach, thanks for taking my call, you and
Sure.
Max. And I love this topic because it's definitely like a chicken or egg. For me, with this schedule, and I think the schedule is daunting, if they can manage to win 10 wins this season, I'm happy as long as it looks good. And the reason I say that is they could win 7 games, and if it looks good, I could be okay. Jayden's healthy, defense is better. This is a tough schedule, and I think it makes it difficult because I do think there's some heat under Quinn's seat, and I'm nervous that they're going to have to reset this whole thing. So I'd rather it work than not work. But I think the schedule in front of them is very, very difficult. They got 3 easy games, in my opinion, Arizona and twice against the Giants. And I personally think the Giants have a better roster than we do.
Well, then that would make those games not easy games, right?
Well, I think the difference between the quarterback, I think we have a better quarterback than everybody we're going to play this year. But if you take it as a 52-man roster, I think we're short a lot of times.
Right.
But hopefully we can put 10 wins together.
Yeah, look, it looks like a difficult schedule on paper. We know how the schedule game works, right? It's not who you play, it's when you play them, and that has a lot to do with it. We could do this going back years and years and years. What looked like incredibly difficult sometimes becomes not so difficult. What looks like incredibly easy sometimes becomes very difficult. You can only play them the way they're laid out. It doesn't look easy, certainly at the beginning, with road games in the division against Philly and Dallas, and then the Super Bowl champions coming to town in week 3. And then 3 weeks after that, the 49ers on a Monday night before a stretch of the Eagles and Rams back-to-back coming off the bye week. So, yeah, it looks daunting. And there is a context in which, wow, they actually played some really good football. They were improved defensively. Jayden played at a high level. The coordinators both looked like they knew what they were doing, but they lost a lot of tight games against a brutal schedule. That is possible. And at 9-8 or 8-9, they missed the postseason. But more likely than not, if it is what we want it to be, they should win more games than they lose. Because let me just start with this. If Jayden is healthy and plays 17 games, even against this schedule, I'll be surprised if they don't win more games than they lose. And that means at least 9-8. At least 9-8. And that puts them into the playoff conversation for sure. All right, Jason, thank you. Ian, Ken, Tim, anybody else that wants to jump on, we do have an open line available. I'm asking here 2 days before they have their first training camp practice with veterans involved on Wednesday. What would you define as successful in 2026? Just fill in the blank. Washington's 2026 season is successful if ... Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget you can watch this show on our Team 980 YouTube channel. When you get there, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. This Eric Bieniemy story is getting it's just hopefully, I mean, she survives.
She is
and
stable.
It's all well, but Eric Bieniemy's son, Elijah Bieniemy, has been charged with 3 felonies now: use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, malicious wounding, and discharging a firearm within a building. The mother, Mia Bieniemy, was shot last night at their home, which I guess they still have, obviously, in Ashburn, in Loudoun County. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I had Jeremy Fowler, by the way, on my podcast over the weekend. You'll hear that coming up this hour. Ben Standig will join us at noon. The Jeremy Fowler conversation is interesting because he's the one that spearheaded the entire top 10 list that ESPN puts out and has put out, every year for the last 7 or 8 years. He's the one that gathers the votes from all of the GMs and scouts and head coaches and puts together the top 10 lists with the honorable mentions, etc. And I had him talk about that list and the putting together for a bit. The question right now is, what will define a successful season in 2026 for you? We are training camp underway, rookie-wise. Veterans report tomorrow. The first practice with veterans involved is Wednesday. We're going to hear from Quinn this week. We're going to hear from Adam Peters, I believe, this week. We'll probably hear from the quarterback and several others. So week 1 of training camp, this will, by the way, be the last week until the week between the championship games and the Super Bowl without any football, because a week from this Thursday, we get the Hall of Fame game, the first preseason game of the year. And then the following weekend, we get all of the preseason week 1 games. My definition of a successful season is 2-part. 1, they go to the playoffs. 2, Jaden Daniels has an excellent season marked by health throughout. And at the end of it, without giving you any numbers, just what we see is what we saw, or most of us saw, in 2024, an elite level franchise quarterback who has, by the way, advanced because he's in his 3rd season. Hard to advance from where he was in 2024, but we'll know it when we see it. It's like a lot of things. You don't have to describe it much. I know it when I see it, and we'll know it when we see it this year. That's success for me. Playoffs and Jaden Daniels healthy, having another great season. That means we are 2 for 3 with him in the playoffs. The only season they're not in the playoffs is when he doesn't play most of the season. And you continue to have these off seasons of hopefully building up a stronger and stronger roster around him. Ian, go ahead.
I will say a playoff victory, echoing a lot of your previous callers. And then I will add that Jaden Daniels, to kind of put a parameter around his success, that he would have to be a Pro Bowl selection. So a top 3 quarterback in the NFC would be my criteria.
Right. Not an alternate, but an actual top 3, like he was in 24.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, Pro Bowl voting is, a little bit of a popularity contest, but I understand there's no way he's going to be a Pro Bowler. He's not going to win that popularity contest if he doesn't have a really, really good season. So it sounds like we're in lockstep. You just need the playoff win. And I prefer the playoff win. And by the way, I think if they make the playoffs, I think like in 2024, if they make the playoffs and he had an excellent season, they're going to have a chance to win a playoff game or 2. With him, you're going to have chances once you get there. But thank you, Ian, for that. How about Tim? Tim, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Kevin. I would say success is, for me, 10 wins, not necessarily making a playoff, but if they have 10 wins, it tells me that Jaden Daniels has had a good season. And I just want to add one thought. Many, many, many moons ago, I attended the Joe Gallagher and Morgan Wooten basketball camp. And I remember Morgan Wooten stating then, perfect practice. And I bring this up because last year, reading between the lines and listening between the lines, it seemed to me that practice was a little bit off. And they can't win 10 games if they don't have good practices. Now, I understand you need good players as well, but I think 10 wins for me is successful, playoffs or no playoffs, but I want to see the practices be better. Thank you.
Tim, you and I both learned a lot of lessons from Morgan Wooten and Joe Gallagher at the Metropolitan Basketball Summer Camp at St. John's, which I went to for about 6 straight summers, including how to make a half-court shot by bouncing it in, which Morgan would do at the end of camp every day, as I'm sure you remember. But good pull. I appreciate that. And hearkening back to those incredible summer days down off Military Road. Look, if they win 10 games, then Jaden was healthy and played in most of them. I mean, that seems pretty obvious. And in response, to the practice thing, Quinn kind of admitted that not too long ago, that they didn't have that same level of urgency that they had in 24. I'll tell you this, if they don't have that same level of urgency this year and the results aren't good, when you Coach Thompson used to say, be careful when you start taking too much of the blame because ownership will start to believe you. So, if they're not practicing at the same urgency level and they have another bad season, it's not going to be good news for Dan Quinn. Bruce, is Bruce on hold or not?
Yeah.
Bruce, go ahead.
Entertaining 10 wins. And I stress entertaining, not boring. And also Jaden being named the starting quarterback for the flag football team at the end of the season. Thank you.
Really? That's what you want? That's going to define success? What, for the Olympic team in 2028?
Like you just said, it puts you in the top 3 quarterbacks if he gets named starter to the flag football team, which used to be called the Pro Bowl, but we.
I'm sorry. I wasn't following you, Bruce. My fault. Remember, he played in that charity, the Tom Brady thing, flag football. By the way, he was going out as a receiver, diving for, balls, the whole thing. I see what you're saying. You're talking about just making the Pro Bowl and being the starter in the Pro Bowl. Look, I will tell you, after the 24 years that we just went through, plus the few that preceded the Dan Snyder era, if they make the playoffs and they're not super exciting, I'm going to be okay with that. But I do think with this particular team, if they're good enough to make the playoffs, that means their quarterback played at a very high level, and he is exciting when he plays at a high level. Thank you, Bruce, for that. Appreciate it. This is all subject to change, of course, because things happen and there's context around anything, and it's hard to fast forward to the context. It's impossible to. There's certainly a world in which 9-8 was a very successful season, and 11-6 wasn't. 9-8 could be, man, they overcame this, they overcame that, they won some good close games. They played with, you don't want them playing without Jaden, but they didn't have a lot around him, and he was great. And the coaching, they won a couple of games with great coaching at the end, or whatever it is. Man, they eked out that 9th win, got him into the 7 seed as a wild card. And then there could be 11-6, where at one point they were 11-2. And lost the last 4, and then went out meekly in the first round, and it doesn't feel as good. It's impossible to fast forward to the context around whatever this season is. I really would love to watch this upcoming season with Jaden Daniels under center or in shotgun for 17 games in the regular season healthy. I feel like if that happens, based on what I think of him, I don't think there's any way they lose more games than they win. Maybe the defense, once again, isn't good enough. Maybe the supporting cast around him, he's, elevating everybody, but still only to, certain levels, and they only win 9 games. But they'll win more games than they lose if he plays in 17. I feel so confident saying that, even with that schedule. Even with that schedule. All right, when we come back, Jeremy Fowler from ESPN will be my guest. Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the Team980.com. So, we'll have more information because some of the information's coming out about Ben Steele, the Skins tight end coach that they parted ways with this morning. Ben's going to join us, standing, that is, at noon, and he'll update the story. But it does look like there's more information coming out about that. I had Jeremy Fowler from ESPN on my podcast over the weekend. And just to give you a heads up, we recorded it before the Kyle Shanahan accident news, before John Lynch weighed in on Brandon Ayuk. And, you know, that update was somewhat benign anyway. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that some of what we talked about was before some of those news stories from San Francisco and the Bay Area came out. But Jeremy, remember, put together and spearheaded the whole effort on the top 10 list on ESPN. But here was the conversation with him the other day. Right now is ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. You guys know Jeremy. He's one of the best NFL reporters out there. He is a senior NFL reporter for ESPN. You can follow him on X at JFowlerESPN. And I wanted Jeremy on the show because we've talked a lot about his annual top 10 list for each of the position groups in the NFL. It's Jeremy's project. He spearheads this thing. It includes 70 or so front office execs, GMs, head coaches, scouts that vote on the best players for each of these position groups. And I actually wanted to start with something specific about the way you lay out these lists, because it's not necessarily clear. I think it's clear to me, and I just wanted to confirm that after the top 10, you then have honorable mention and also receiving votes. And I've assumed, since the honorable mentions and the others receiving votes, Jeremy, are not listed in alphabetical order, that they are listed as they received votes. So as an example, Jaden Daniels was the second quarterback on the honorable mention list. I know that he ended up tying for 10th with Caleb Williams and Sam Darnold, but he was listed as the second honorable mention quarterback. So I've assumed, in looking at your lists over the years, that means that he's the 12th best quarterback in the NFL. You've got your top 10, and then he's the second listed on the honorable mention list. Is that how they're laid out?
Yes, that's exactly the way I lay it out. I basically keep it as a consistent ranking after the top 10. So yeah, Jaden Daniels was 12, 10 through 13, Sam Darnold, Daniels, Jordan Love, and Caleb Williams were a variation of a tie. Like, it was all very, very close, so I had to kind of split them at that point.
Right. And then even when you get to others receiving votes, they're listed, again, not alphabetically, so I assumed based on the votes they got.
Yes, typically. There are rare cases, like wide receiver I did the other day. I had forgotten to add Chris Olave, so they added him to the end of the list. He probably should have been higher on that list. But yeah, typically it is in order. I try to stack it that way best I can. And there are a lot of players that get like one vote. It's a 9 or a 10. So that can be, I just kind of list them as I see fit at that point.
So
especially with quarterbacks, that was a hard top 20 ranking.
Yeah, that's interesting that you just mentioned Olave, because I actually, I don't know if it was on this podcast or my radio show, but in recent years, Jeremy, there's been a lot of debate among Skins fans as to where Terry McLaurin ranks among the receivers in the league. And I have recently said that, there are a couple of guys, Drake London and Chris Olave in particular, that, I think they're right there with Terry, if not better than Terry. And when your list came out, Olave was the last one on the others receiving votes list, which surprised me because I thought he'd be a little bit higher. So where would he have been had you put him in the correct spot? And I'm just curious, would Olave have been in front of Terry or behind him on that list of others receiving votes?
Do you know? Here, I'll tell you. So yeah, I can tell you here. Let me look up my voting. I believe. Hold on, bear with me. I got to find it.
It's okay.
Now I'm curious.
Okay.
Ask me another question, and I'll get back to you on this because I'll find it. I'm curious myself.
Yeah, let me just stick with kind of the overall concept. I love it. I love that it comes from people within the league. When you do this, like for this year's, rankings, what was the biggest pushback you got on any of the top 10s or anything that followed?
Well, the biggest pushback I get typically is on the snubs or just a disagreement fundamentally on the rankings. I got a lot of pushback on Jordan Love, and deservedly so. He's probably worked his way into a top 10 quarterback discussion at this point. There'd be some sneaky ones that you get killed for, like not having Cam Hayward, the longtime great Steelers defensive tackle, in the top 13. He was 14th, I believe, 14th or 15th. So I got a lot of pushback on that because he was an all-pro again, but he's 36 going on 37. So age is a big factor in the voting. I didn't get much pushback at all from Washington fans. I was a little surprised because they only had one top 10 player and a couple close calls, but not really all that close. It's just sort of a roster in transition, but I think it's a better roster and they have good depth. It just didn't really show up in the voting. And so I think Commanders fans know that. They're like, well, there's not a whole lot we can complain about, especially with Jaden Daniels missing time that he did last year.
Yeah, I think that we all understand the roster is not, Philadelphia's roster or Houston's roster or the Rams roster, et cetera. And I think the quarterback thing is kind of where we thought it would come in because out of sight is out of mind, right? Even with people within the league, when you only play in 4 out of 17 games start to finish, there's some recency bias to this, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I found your McLaurin note. So he was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He was 18th. Terry was 18th.
Olave was 18th or McLaurin was?
McLaurin was 18th. Olave would have been tied with him. So they had the same average. They got the same votes that equaled the same number. So 18 or 19, definitely not 20. Those two would be tied for 18th. Tied for 17th. I got a tie for 17th. DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Chris Olave for 17th.
What do you think the toughest position group for people to vote on is?
It's usually wide receiver. So it depends on the year. Typically, like wide receiver last year was the hardest one, and Terry was in the middle of that discussion.
Yeah.
Because you always have the log jam at the 10th spot, and it goes in waves. Like the voting, when I look at my ballot, it's broken into tiers typically. And that year in particular, you had the 9th and 10th spot. It was essentially a tie between Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, Puka Nacua, Brian Thomas Jr. And that was a tough one. That one I literally spent a week trying to figure out 2 receiver spots. And it was stressful, and I'm taking it head coaches. There was one head coach in particular that I greatly respected, had Terry number 1 out of that group of 4. There were others that were like, you have to have Puka in there. It's crazy he's not in there. I think it ended up being McLaurin. No, it was Mike Evans and Terry. I want to say Terry's in the top 10 last year. I have to look back.
Yeah.
But it was really close among those 4. And, that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. So Terry's been anywhere from like 9 to 18. That's kind of been his range, which, when you consider the depth of receiver, that's pretty good. The receiver's typically the toughest one. This year it was not tough. It was actually pretty clear. The top 10 was clear. There wasn't like a log jam. When you get log jams, it's really tough. Last year, linebacker was really, really hard. This year, it was really, really clear. So it just depends on the year. But receiver is typically the toughest one because of the great depth of the position.
Yeah, there's no doubt. We've seen this in the last 5, 6, 7 years, just incredible talent at that position coming in. What was the runaway number 1 in any position group? The easiest number 1 vote getter? Was it Myles Garrett?
Yeah, it was Myles. He was the only player to receive every first place vote.
Yeah.
Which is pretty uncommon, honestly. He was just so undeniable last year. He's one of the best athletes we've ever seen at the position. Well, really any position, I think. It's pretty clear to say. You could argue he's the best athlete on the planet in the NFL game in the modern era. That's not a stretch. He looks different out there, moves different. And when he put together the sack numbers that he did, it's just hard to deny. Fred Warner always dominates the voting. Typically Patrick Mahomes had, but it's sort of flipped the last few years. But even this year, he still led the quarterbacks in first place votes. So It all depends, and sometimes it's surprising. Kyle Hamilton at safety, he did the best, even though like Derwin James, a lot of people thought he should have been number one. So, Patrick Surtain always dominates. Some of the same names that have been dominating for a few years now, and they haven't really lost their grip. Leonard Williams, the defensive tackle, was the big surprise. He was the top defensive tackle, but like coaches in particular were just like, he's the best player on the field and he should be number one. So it just kind of became clear.
Yeah. I think the only thing, like in looking at the edge rushers again, and I'm remembering what I said about that list, I think that was the biggest surprise for me more than any other, is that TJ Watt was 7th. I mean, I'm surprised that he's not ahead of Danielle Hunter for sure. And even Crosby, maybe not. It's certainly not Will Anderson Jr. I think Will Anderson Jr. is the closest thing to Myles Garrett that we have right now. But I was surprised that TJ Watt was 7th. He was 2nd last year.
Yeah, I am too. And I sometimes it's a perfect storm with these where it's like if a guy has a down year, which he had partly due to injury, but partly because he didn't have his normal sack numbers, then it's like, oh, well, he's 31. By the way, I forgot his age. Oh, he's 31, and he's not as explosive. And, hey, they would trade him. And then it's just like a snowball. It's like, wait a minute, this guy was a premier player, number 1 or 2 at the position for a half decade. So what changed? And so it's kind of like, I think sometimes it's a perfect storm of that. When your age, when you add age, injury, lack of production, that's the perfect storm. That's the triple crown. Cooper Kupp was number 2, I think number 2 or 3 wide receiver a couple of years ago.
Right.
When we have that trifecta of age, lack of production, and injuries, that's what happens. You fall out. So teams look for that. These voters value age more than most fans would, but they also cherry pick it depending on who they like. Like some people get the benefit of the doubt. Jaden Daniels did not. Despite age, he didn't get the benefit of the doubt. I think because there was a preconceived bias that he would get injured in the NFL, and he did. So it's almost like an "I told you so." Even though if you're picking best quarterbacks of how they play the position, he is a top 10 player. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The way he plays the position.
Yeah, I agree with that. The interesting thing about the injury thing, you're right. There was preconceived fear of injury, and yet he played in all 20 games as a rookie. He played in 52 of 54 as a college player in 2 spots. But last year, sort of confirmed for a lot of people, this guy is going to be a guy that gets hurt a lot. The interesting thing about that, Jeremy, is Joe Burrow gets hurt a lot. Lamar Jackson gets hurt a lot. Patrick Mahomes got hurt a lot. I didn't get hurt a lot, but last year got hurt. It's harder to find the quarterbacks that stay healthy for 17 games year in and year out. The Josh Allen run that he's on, essentially. It's almost that is not the norm.
Yeah, and it's increasingly so. I mean, I bet if we looked at the data, we'd probably see 30% of the starting quarterbacks missed either minor amount of time or significant time. Joe Burrow, that's one where voters cherry pick. They love Joe Burrow. They love the way he plays. They feel like he's the closest thing to Tom Brady. So despite the injury, they'll overlook it a little bit, even though they didn't put him top 3, they made him 4th, and he got some first place votes just because they love the way he plays, Where Lamar Jackson gets hurt, and people hold that against him. Oh, yeah, not durable. Look, he's a runner. Look what happens.
Right.
He's a dual threat. He's not going to last. Like you get some of those biases that do come into play. But it's a tough position because the D linemen are so good. The quality of offensive lines has dipped a little bit, and I think most scouts would tell you that over the last decade. There's talent, but these guys are running different systems, running more, easier offenses, more, spread concepts, getting the play from the sideline on a big card versus out of the huddle. Like the nuances of O-line play are tougher for NFL coaches to rectify when they get these players when they come in. So all those factors are resulting in quarterbacks getting hurt. Plus you got, guys that need to run a little bit, need to be more mobile than ever to play the position in a lot of ways. And that results in injury. We saw that with Mahomes getting hurt throwing on the run with defenders crashing down on him. So it's a tough situation, That's why backup quarterbacks get paid well now because you have to have a good one.
Last question on this list. Do you have just a gut feel on this time next year a player that's not really prominent on any of these lists that you think will be?
Ooh, I have many. Let's see. I'll have to think about that one. I'll give you a few. So, Amari Lassiter, Houston Texans corner.
Right.
Harold Fannin, Cleveland tight end. Let's see. Linebacker. Edgar Cooper was number 9. I think he'll be a lot higher. Man, there's some tough ones. You put me on the spot. I'm trying to think.
That's all right. That's all right. Those are good ones.
Malik Neighbors was out of the top 10
Right.
this year.
Yeah.
I think if he's healthy, he's a superstar.
Agreed.
Jared Verse, I think we'll have a big year in Cleveland. Latu in Indianapolis, young that doesn't get a lot of recognition, but I think he will.
Yeah. No.
So, yeah, there are many. Byron Murphy in Seattle, D tackle, is a monster. He'll be a top 10 player next year. So, yeah, there's certainly a lot. Something in terms of Washington, who I'd like to was young on the radar.
Yeah.
I think they'll have a bit of a bounce out here.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jaden would be the one that would take the big leap if he plays 17 games. I'll give you one actually from their roster. Two of them. I think Chigakonkwo could make the tight end list this time next year. Yeah. And I think Nick Cross could be somewhere on the safeties list. Maybe not top 10, but somewhere like honorable mention, something like that.
Yeah, Cross has a lot of ability. I was kind of surprised he didn't get a bigger contract, to be honest. They got a nice deal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's a player. He's physical. He's got good speed. I like Colin Martin, too. I know he didn't have maybe as good of a year as he did the year before, but he's flashed.
All right, let me move to Brandon Ayuk as the topic, because he's been a major topic here for several weeks now. And you've, had a lot of things to say about it, and I've played a lot of the stuff that you've said over the last few weeks about him. So where do we stand today on Brandon Ayuk and Washington first, and then anybody else in the NFL second?
Man, I don't know if there is any real update here. I don't know that there's a real outlook. I don't know about much of anything other than he wants to play in Washington. I would just be shocked if GM Adam Peters made that signing at this point. I think if he can somehow get out of his contract in San Francisco and get released, which really requires him to just show up. If he shows up when they report to camp, the 49ers aren't going to want to have him around, so they'll cut him. This all seems pretty clear. And he won't do that. So here we are. But if he can get out of that deal, maybe at some point, I'm still leaving a little wiggle room that he can sort of rebrand himself, sort of repurpose his image a little bit here, do some PR training, and then maybe somebody signs him for the vet minimum. I've resorted to that. I don't know, man. I have a tough time thinking he's going to get signed this cycle. If it is, it won't be for any real money. But the whispers of him not playing again seem very real. I think people are just curious what kind of person he is at this point. They just don't know. They don't know if he's healthy either. So maybe you bring him in for a workout / physical somewhere. So we'll see. I think if Washington signs him, they're going to need some time to pass. But this is a guy who insulted Jaden Daniels' mother. I don't see this happening. I would just be shocked if he's a Commander.
So we've talked a lot about, Jeremy, just, Ayuk's insistence that he's going to be a Washington player, his desire to become a Washington player, incorporating, our starting quarterback, Jaden Daniels, into a lot of his videos on social media. I'm curious as to why, if you don't think that he's going to end up in Washington, if that would be a surprise to you at this point, why hasn't Adam Peters or somebody within that organization leaked to, you or Schefter or Rappaport or somebody that they're not going to be interested in Ayuk if and when he becomes available, just to, solidify it in everybody's mind so that the conversation stops? I know that they can't say they are interested in him because that's tampering, but do you have a theory as to why we haven't found out from them that they're not interested if they aren't?
Yeah, really when I checked on Washington's receiver outlook back in June, I was told hey, we're dusting our hands of this until camp. So maybe we're getting closer here to getting a resolution on that. We're getting just a little bit of clarity, which would be good. Some organizations are going to say, we're never going to close the door on anything, even if they don't expect to sign a player. And they don't have to say anything. They don't have to make any sort of declaration. It kind of helps them to keep their plans in the dark a little bit because there are other receivers that could sign.
Right.
And they want to keep a little mystery, perhaps, for market purposes. So I still think Keenan Allen could be a viable option. We'll see. Or Stephon Diggs. Diggs wants to be there. I think that's pretty clear. He feels like he's good for young quarterbacks. He feels like since he's not rehabbing an ACL anymore, he'll be even more productive. So we'll see. I really think Washington could use a speed guy to complement the others. And, Tyreek Hill's not close to playing right now, but he will be ready at some point. Maybe that's midseason. Maybe somebody like that makes sense. I don't know. It's tough. You have a fairly young roster. You don't want to just get 30-year-old retreads, So they have a lot to weigh over there. I do think in the next week, some of their plans will become crystallized because they have to.
Is there a market for Stephon Diggs?
Well, yes, I'm told there are teams interested. But a lot of times, especially this time of year for older players,
right, they wait.
Teams are interested to a point. They don't want to give somebody $10 million a year if they don't have to. Now, if there's an injury at the position, and we just saw Nick Gordon, the pass rusher in Carolina, tear his ACL yesterday, first day. Those things can happen. That creates leverage a little bit for players that are looking to be found somewhere because then a starter is needed. So if you're first on the line at that position in free agency, you could get some extra money. So it's wise for some of these guys to wait, and you don't have to go through a full training camp. Like a lot of these guys don't want to do that. I probably wouldn't want to do that if I was 32 and had been playing 10 years and could wait 2 weeks. So there's a lot of factors in play. I think if he wanted a job and simply wanted a job at the right fit, he could probably sign right now. But the money's involved, and there are other factors.
Two more, Jeremy, and I really appreciate the time. The first is this, Dan Quinn's situation here in Washington. How would you describe it heading into 2026? What kind of seat is he on?
I don't think he's on the hottest of hot seats right now, and I think he does have goodwill in that building, and last year was a weird year with a lot of injuries. That said, a lot of coaches have a hard time surviving 2 consecutive bad years, so if this year they really go south, I wouldn't take anything off the table, But I do know he's well liked there, and he did a phenomenal job year one. Last year, they actually were able to move the ball a little bit despite some issues and do some things. The defense fell flat.
Terrible, yeah.
Some of that is the age of the roster, So we'll see. I think part of it's just what the product looks like, what it feels like when the players walk into the building. I think is important. So Dan Quinn's big on culture, so if he can keep the culture up, that could result in squeaking out a few extra wins that will help his cause. So I don't think he's on the hot. I wouldn't put him number one on the hot seat list, but certainly any coach coming off a bad year, you got to at least consider the possibility. That's just the way the NFL business works right now.
All right. Last one is just on Washington's upcoming season. What are you expecting?
Man, that's tough. Well, I will say I'm going to be there at camp here in a few weeks, and I'm curious to see myself. That will help me gauge it a little bit. I like the additions they made. They could use probably one more weapon on offense. You mentioned the Chig signing. I like that one. If Jaden Daniels gives you even 80% of what he did as a rookie, I think things are looking up. I don't have him as a contender for like the top seed in the NFC right now or anything like that. I also think it's a really good division this year. NFC East is pretty well loaded. But if they made a push for it, that wouldn't surprise me. I probably have him right in the middle right now, somewhere in that sweet spot, give or take 8 or 9 wins over or under. Could be one direction or the other, on that. So I would say I'm vacillating. I know that doesn't give you a lot.
No, that's fine.
I need to see more. I expect them to be improved for sure.
Jeremy, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate having me.
Jeremy Fowler, everybody. When we come back, there is news on Washington's tight ends coach who was let loose earlier this morning. We'll give that to you. Ben's coming up at 12. That would be Standig. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. So our football team this morning let its tight ends coach go due to a violation of team policy. Now, there's been a lot of reporting on this. Ben, Nikki, John, everybody. I'll read from Nikki's tweets this morning. According to Virginia court records, Ben Steele, their tight ends coach, he is a new coach to the group. He was brought on as a tight ends coach this offseason, been with the Cardinals the last 3 years. According to Virginia court records, Steele was arrested on suspicion of driving while intoxicated on June 7th. He faces additional charges for refusing a blood breath test and obstructing and or resisting an officer without force. And so the team, according to a source close to the situation, Nikki tweeted out, they have let him go due to a violation of the team policy. He was placed on leave after he informed the team of his arrest, and the team reported it to the league. Wes Welker, who is on the staff, actually coached the tight ends during minicamp while Ben Steele was on leave. So there you go. You know, it's one of those things where when I saw this morning, you mentioned it to me, and I said, I will bet you any amount of money that 95% of our fans would not be able to identify who Ben Steele is before this news. And I don't know, was during OTAs and during minicamp, was it reported that their tight ends coach was not there and that Wes Welker was coaching the tight ends? Or was this the first that we've heard that he hasn't been a participant? I don't know. It's just one of those things where maybe it was reported, but because you go down, you know, we've had this conversation before when you hear people, you know, certain about certain, you know, they're definitive in sort of their opinions about deep down the list coaches on coaching staffs, or, you know, general manager candidates who have never been general managers before. The people in the league know these people. Most people don't have enough information to truly have a great opinion on said players. I mean, I think I pointed out that Adam Peters, prior to the year that he got hired, literally you could have, you know, given somebody $1,000 to point Adam Peters out in a police lineup 2 years earlier, and no one would have been able to do it. It's the head coaches, it is the coordinators that have been around for a while, and the players that are visually and by name very exposed in our league. Like it's my league. There are a couple of other things that I wanted to get to before we get to Ben. LeBron James signed, as we know, with the Philadelphia 76ers. It happened late Friday, or late in the show on Friday. He is going to commute from New York. He's going to live in New York City, and he will officially commute daily via helicopter to Philadelphia's practices. He apparently wanted to play for the Knicks, but the Knicks were one of the few teams that did not show any interest in LeBron. They just won a title. You know, they don't necessarily need LeBron. But LeBron wanted, you know, think about this, right? He lived in LA. He lived in Miami. He lived in his hometown or near his hometown of Northeastern Ohio, Cleveland. And so that's more familiar to him. Philly's not a bad town. I like Philadelphia, but it's not New York. And LeBron at 41 years old, I bet you a big part of the place that he was going to play, he says it was driven solely on where could he go and win a title. And look, adding him to Tyrese Maxey, to Joel Embiid, to Edgecombe, and of course to Jaylen Brown, Philadelphia on paper looks like a championship contender in the East for sure. I think Embiid is the key. He's got to be healthy. He's got to be healthy at playoff time, or I don't see them getting I could see them still getting to the finals, but not by a Western Conference final champion, not certainly the Spurs with their size, or even Oklahoma City for that matter. But he's going to live in New York and commute to practice by helicopter every single day. And then there was this. You heard my conversation from the other day with Jeremy Fowler. He is reporting that Washington's one of the teams, and Diggs is intrigued about going to Washington, which is what he said. But TMZ reported that getting Stephon Diggs apparently over the weekend to say that he is open to everything when he was asked about playing in Washington. So I guess Stephon Diggs is still a possibility, I think. I just, if it's going to happen, you would think it would happen now. Now, wide receiver conversation as it relates to our team. There is, I told you about Brandon Ayuk and what John Lynch had to say about him over the weekend, which was next to nothing. Essentially, he's not on our roster. He's on the left squad list. And so we're only talking about the players that are here. Well, somebody in The Athletic, there's a story in The Athletic, Matt Barrows and Nikki, okay, so the San Francisco 49ers beat reporter for The Athletic and the Skins beat reporter for The Athletic, Matt Barrows and Nikki Javala, wrote a story that just came out today, and Ayuk responded to a text message sent to him about Washington, in which he replied, quote, AP, as in Adam Peters, and DQ, as in Dan Quinn, quietly put together a squad. And he did misspell squad, even though he wrote it in capital letters. He wrote SQAUD. Squad, I believe, is SQ.
Hey, he found the extra U. He left off a Loudon.
So he misspelled squad. So he said AP and DQ quietly put together a squad or a squad. I'm the final piece that will swing all the odds in our favor. And then he had a trophy emoji and hashtagged the text message with Go Commanders and hashtag Raise Hail. So, look, I don't know no one really knows. Is he, dressing up is he playing dress up in Washington gear because he's delusional and he so wants this to happen? Or is it because he's been told that there's a pretty high likelihood of it happening? But again, until he applies for reinstatement, until he shows up to the 49ers facility when, as a veteran player, which he would be under contract, needs to show up, none of this can happen. None of it can. And this is where I keep coming back to where I've been now for a month and a half, which is, this is not a serious person, perhaps. It may be that he's just not a smart person, or it may be that he's just still so devastatingly hurt from whatever these situations were with the 49ers that he can't summon up the courage and the energy to do what he needs to do to actually create the opportunity for the outcome that he wants. So there you go. Ben Standing next. Turn on the mic. That helps. Training camp is underway with rookies, but the veterans report tomorrow, and then the first practice of 2026 summer training camp is on Wednesday. Ben Standig will be there for all of it for the rest of the summer and then the entire season. He is our Commanders insider on this show. You can follow Ben on X at Ben Standig, and you should subscribe to his Substack, in which he covers the team and does it with lots of information and opinion on a daily basis. It's called Last Man Standing. So let's start with like the news of the day. And that is that the tight ends coach, Ben Steele, is gone. So I've kind of been following all of you who have been reporting the various reasons for his departure. But was it even noticed during the spring that he wasn't there?
So there was a point during the offseason program where they make the assistant coaches available, one day offense, one day defense. And when it came to the offense, they said that he was not available. Now, coaches sometimes miss things because of family stuff and, you know, tend to push too hard on some of that. But anyway, so we were told he wasn't there. We could ask David Rye questions about it. And then that he wasn't at minicamp. I mean, the reality is there's 90 players and dozens of staffers. And like, I'd never even talked to the guy, at this stage. So no, I mean, I clearly nobody noticed it. Otherwise, what's that?
He was brand new this year.
Yeah. He just got hired in March. So no, I don't think it was noticeable at all that he wasn't there. Like I said, I mean, that he was not made available for us. When the assistants talked, I guess, you could say that was some sort of a red flag, but honestly, it's not that uncommon if somebody were to miss, a session for whatever the reason, so talking to us is not exactly the biggest deal in the world. So didn't think too much about it. Obviously nobody else did either. And yeah.
All right. So is Wes Welker going to become the tight ends coach?
That feels like what I think is going to happen. I mean, Welker, was coaching the tight ends when Steele was out for minicamp. And while obviously we all know Welker was not a tight end when he played, I think the bigger key probably here is he, of course, has been now with this group, for the last couple of years. He's familiar with what David Blau's offense is. And that type of understanding is probably what they're more interested in than like sort of having a true tight end coach. From the passing game standpoint, it's probably fine. From the run game standpoint, maybe you have like the assistant offensive line coach, chime in or whatever as needed. But yeah, so my guess is Welker, but Dan Quinn's going to tell us tomorrow when we speak with him.
When Quinn took the job, there was Cliff Kingsbury, there was Tavita Pritchard, there was David Blau. There was a belief that, we heard very early on about Blau and even Pritchard to a certain degree, that they were really, exciting young talents and probably future coaches, if not head coaches. And Tavita Pritchard is at Stanford now. What's the depth of the offensive coaching staff look like? I know I didn't prepare you for this, but, no Kingsbury, Blau's the OC, no Pritchard. Who are the people below Blau? First we want to make sure Blau can do the job, but is there anybody, other than the obvious, which are, a former head coach like Anthony Lynn, who's on the staff? Is there anybody else that they're excited about offensively or defensively?
Yeah, well, they did hire Doug Williams' son, DJ Williams, who was the QB coach with Atlanta.
He was in Atlanta, yeah.
So he's here. I haven't heard declarations of he's going to be a future coach, but that doesn't mean anything anyway. Necessarily. We heard all. I remember hearing Ron Rivera's staff, some people getting mentioned for future guys to watch, and I don't know where they are today. You know what I mean? But in any event, so I go back to the hiring of Blau in the first place, and to some degree, Durante Jones, although his situation is a little bit different. To hire two never been coordinators as coordinators when you're coming off a 5-12 season, and you have to at least, even if he's not really on the hot seat, you have to be like, hey, we really can't do anything like that again. So to hire 2 first-time assistants or coordinators, it was very odd, I thought. And I think, and let's also remember that when they moved on from the offensive line coach, Bobby Johnson, they promoted his assistants to that job, I believe also a job he had not had before on the NFL level. And it said to me, and others sort of thought this as well, that when they put their, when they cast, a wide net out there to get a coach, for these positions, that there was some trepidation out there of like, well, coming off the year they just had, is Dan Quinn here for the long haul or not? And therefore, if I have options as a veteran, maybe I'm going to go somewhere else, i.e. maybe like Mike McDaniel or someone like that. So, to your point of the young guys, I mean, yeah, I guess to an extent they've sort of depleted some of their depth that we knew about because these guys got promoted. I mean, look, they've got a new, they have some other new staffers, but we'll see. I mean, it's hard, like you said, we don't even know what Blau can do the job definitively, let alone whether anybody they hired to be the assistant to the assistant is going to get the job done. So it's definitely a younger staff on the offensive side. You also have Bobby Ingram, who's been a receivers coach for a long time, like Anthony Lynn on the running back side. But yeah, no, it's a younger group, and it's a different group for sure than what they had a year ago.
All right. It looks like 3 players will start training camp. 3 veteran players will start training camp on the active, physically unable to perform list. Trey Amos, Dorrance Armstrong, and Dietrich Wise. What's Trey Amos's status right now? Like, where is he in his recovery from the injury?
Yeah. So, they don't have to tell us, of course, anything specific until basically week 1 when they have to do an injury report. And Dan Quinn, back in the offseason program, said that, there's a few guys, including Tim Settle, who is now clear, who were coming off of season-ending injuries, or surgeries, et cetera. And, their timelines vary, but it didn't sound like anything was, too worrisome. Armstrong, I know you asked about Amos, but like Armstrong, he got hurt in week 7 to ACL tear. So if you do the math, that's like, roughly where we're at in the 9-month mark. Okay, so that's kind of the first time when a player off on the ACL might come back. Dietrich Wise was week 2 of the quad. I don't know necessarily the timeline for that. Seems like it's a long time, but okay. Amos had a fractured fibula, a broken leg. Now, again, I've not had that myself, and I didn't go to medical school, but it feels like that one should be healed by now.
Well, I was reading stuff over the weekend that basically compared, a fractured fibula to, what Dorrance Armstrong had, which was an ACL, what Dietrich Wise had, which was a torn quad. And, it should be a faster turnaround. I guess that's why I'm asking you about it, is that I thought there was kind of an expectation that Amos was going to be good to go, and he's not, at least here at the beginning of camp. Is it more cautionary or what?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't heard if it was a compound fracture, if they had to put screws in or anything along those lines. I mean, you would think that would have come out one way or another if that had taken
place. If he had a setback of some sort.
Yeah. Now, he did not practice, as we know, in the off-season program. There was one day where, for stretching, he was out there with his teammates. It looked like he was just kind of, being part of the guys as much as anything. But the fact that he was out there, at least to me, was like, oh, okay, this has got to be somewhat positive, right? He's not on crutches. He's not laboring. And okay, it's only stretching. I mean, even I could do the stretching, but I took that at least somewhat of a positive sign. And look, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe we'll get out there Wednesday or Thursday and Del Trey Amos is ready to go. But yeah, it is a little bit odd that he's, of the 3 that are still unavailable, his is the one that just seems a little odd based on just the general idea of how long these types of injuries take to recover.
Well, the other part of it, too, is that of those 3, not that I don't want Dorrance Armstrong and Dietrich Wise back healthy and ready to go, but, man, they would really be light at corner if Amos weren't ready to go.
Wait, so I lost you there for a second. Say that part again.
No, I just said I want Armstrong and Wise back. But the positions they're playing, there are a lot of players there. Amos, there aren't a lot of knowns at corner, and he's supposed to be maybe the number one corner. And it's already a position where I think a lot of people believe they've needed to add to it. Look, that may have been the number one reason they added Rasul Douglas is Trey Amos and the timetable on him.
Yeah, no, the Rasul Douglas signing I took as, because of what I've been certainly talking about it, I'm sure you were as well, like, hey, the cornerback room is kind of thin, and, especially, on the outside. So getting Douglas, I just thought was nothing else. Okay, they have more depth. Is it possible that it's related to Trey Amos? I mean, obviously we have to consider it for sure. I do think, like, because Trey Amos looked promising last year, was having a pretty good year until the injury, that we're just sort of like going, okay, well, when he comes back, he'll be the number one guy. I mean, I think that's a bit of if we're thinking that, I think that's a bit of an assumption rather than a reality. Like, I don't know that he was like the guy you're saying, okay, every week now you go get CD Lamb and Malik Neighbors and whomever, and that's the thing. So, I mean, he's good. I'm just a bit like, I don't know if he's that. And then because the other side is still a lot of questions, it's, it is the position that sort of worries me the most for them. Now, again, maybe it's not going to matter as much because they're going to get all this pass rushing, and that's going to force quarterbacks to throw early and so on and so on. But yeah, the cornerback room was already the one to me that was the most questionable, even more so than receiver. And now we don't, we'll have to see when the guy who's presumably the number one is going to be back.
Ben Standing joining us. He wrote this morning a write-up on all 43 offensive players in camp. And this is what he does, people. You get in depth with the entire roster. He literally took jersey number 1 through the last offensive jersey, which is Lawrence Cager's number 89. And he gave you, a paragraph or two on every single player entering camp and what to watch for. So other than the obvious, give me a player that you were kind of into writing about because you think there's a chance that there's going to be some conversation about this player over the next month and a half.
I'm going to go super deep cut here because as I was doing this, I was reminded of this individual.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Okay, go ahead. I was going to guess, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. You can guess if you want. I'm going with a guy they signed last year as a UDFA, Tim McKay.
Yeah.
Now, again, this is a guy who he started 3 years at guard for NC State. When he was coming out in 25, he was named to like the all practice team at the East-West Shrine game. But then he suffered a torn pectoral at his pro day, goes undrafted. But these guys gave him a $275,000 signing bonus, which is, not nothing for a UDFA. And, again, I'm not saying he would have been a first-round pick if he had not gotten hurt. But, he may have been drafted. And considering when you look at not so much the starting guard, but we just look at in general at the line, Andrew Wiley is over 30. Trent Scott's over 30. Julian Good-Jones, if he was going to stick around, he's 29. Like they could use some, a little more youth coming off the bench. So again, I'm not sitting here saying I've heard from people there that like, oh, this guy, look out. But just looking at the math, that was just one that sort of stood out to me when I
read this during one of the breaks during the show. And when you started off that write-up on Timothy McKay, which, by the way, I was completely unfamiliar with here's a fun one to watch, and then mention that they gave him a $275,000 signing bonus last year, that was one of the ones that stuck out when I was reading through it. Yeah, no, for sure. You mentioned Lawrence Cager, not so much from writing this, but, we got to remember that I think it was the owners meeting when we spoke with Dan Quinn, and he just randomly out of the blue naming, talking about guys he was interested in seeing for practices, and Cager was a guy he mentioned. And you look at him, and you're just like, well, this guy's clearly a professional athlete, huge,
chiseled cut. Like he looks like, if you're casting a football player in a movie, here's a good one. But obviously, he's not a rookie. He's been around for a little bit, hasn't cracked the lineup here. And obviously they've got 4 guys with Benson and Colson Yankoff backing up Chig Okonkwo and John Bates. So I don't know that he necessarily is going to make the team. But again, if the head coach is pointing it out, then we got to hear
well,
that.
It wasn't the only time he's mentioned him. He was mentioned another time in the offseason and then was mentioned last summer when Cager actually was on the field in preseason games. And to your point, and I remember specifically sort of highlighting the fact that I don't know who this 89 is, but he looks like an NFL pass-catching tight end. He's big, he can run, and he's got soft hands.
Yeah, no, for sure. Tight end is a position group that, I think it's probably one of the ones we're talking about the least in terms of, concern. Obviously, Chig Okonkwo is new here, but, he's been a solid player. There's a lot of athletic upside. We're curious to see how that looks. John Bates is, one of the premier blocking tight ends in the league. And I have some high hope. Well, maybe not high hopes, but I have some hopes that Benson is going to flash something this year, because I think this offensive system with Blau is just much more suited than the Kingsbury one was. Plus, they're going to use 12 and 13 personnel, and that's going to get Sinnott out on the field. And then Colson Yankoff, he's I probably would guess one of the top handful of athletes on this team. And, it feels like there's something there, but it just hasn't come undone yet, or hasn't happened yet, which is why this tight end coach news today, again, I'm not saying it's going to be a setback, but, it is a position where it would be nice to have a coach, because, again, you've got, other than Bates, everything is kind of new and different. And, but, obviously they're going to have to move forward.
You also wrote about Van Jefferson, a name that I've mentioned many times because he was another one that Quinn, without any prompting, mentioned coming off the spring OTAs and minicamp. And he's played in the NFL. He is a really good route runner. He doesn't drop passes. I think he's always looked a bit bigger and played a little bit bigger than he actually is. And you said maybe I'm a VJ mark, meaning Van Jefferson mark, but I buy the roster candidacy for this sure-handed target. And I didn't realize it was this, but he hasn't dropped a pass since 2023. Yeah, I think there's a chance for him. I do.
Yeah, I think the one thing I noted in there as well that I think is important, and this is something I thought last year when there was this Michael Gallup talk, Van Jefferson does not play special teams based on his past. He hasn't played in several years. Maybe he can, and maybe his previous teams just didn't want to because he had some injuries or whatever. But if you're not going to play on special teams as a receiver, then you better be like a top 4 in the rotation guy, because you can't just have somebody not playing on offense or special teams. So I think that would be the one potential hang up, is is he going to show enough to warrant playing, or not just be a guy coming off the bench? But yeah, I do think the hands are there. Again, I think they don't have the obvious number 2 receiver, but they have a lot of guys who can have specific skill sets, and I think his is just being reliable. May not sound very sexy, but I think it's obviously an important one, especially when you have a quarterback who's just capable of getting the ball to receivers. And Jaden, I think I've seen some stats that Jaden suffered as much from drops as most quarterbacks did last year in the limited time he was playing. So yeah, I do think there's a chance that he sticks. But again, are they going to keep 6 or 7? If let's not even assume that they bring in anybody else. There's essentially 7 guys for 6 spots, not counting some of the undrafted free agent types. So who would be the odd man out? That's where it gets interesting. And again, I think special teams is probably going to be a factor. And if it is, that may not help him. But I do like Van Jefferson.
Before I ask you the question that I asked callers today, because I want to get Ben's definition of what a successful season in 2026 would be. How about this Eric Bieniemy story? It's his son who's now been charged with shooting Eric Bieniemy's wife and Elijah Bieniemy's mother. They were still had the house. This happened in Ashburn, in Loudoun County. last night. Elijah Bieniemy's been charged with malicious wounding, use of a firearm, and commission of a felony, and discharge of a firearm inside of a dwelling. She is in stable condition, which is good news for Mia Bieniemy at 57 years old. I didn't realize that they were still living in the market. Actually, that may make an assumption. I don't know if they're actually together as husband and wife or not. But this was sad to hear.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it caught me off guard that they were still had a base here in Virginia. But yeah, no, obviously a terrible, sad story. And glad, like you said, glad to hear that she's in stable condition. But yeah, when you heard the first reporting was that she was shot inside the home, and you're just like, oh boy. The obviously first thought has got to be a relative, and I know the people. It was like the enemy was with the Chiefs in Kansas City, or where I think that's where their training camp is. Right. Or actually, it's not in Kansas City, but whatever. He's with the team.
It's in Missouri. It's in Jefferson City. That's, by the way, the capital of Missouri. Is that where it is? Jefferson City, Missouri? I don't know.
Sounds right. I know they're one of the few teams that
St. Joseph's,
away.
Missouri.
Yeah, they go away for camp, which I like. But anyway, yeah, no, it's a terribly sad situation here, and obviously, hope for the best. What a weird morning for the Loudoun County, system here. I mean, you had the Ben Steele's arrest was also in Loudoun County, and I was looking at the Loudoun County court records for that, and then comes the Bieniemy story as well. So yeah, a lot happening local, and again, hopefully she's going to be all right.
Do you have an opinion on Kyle's accident not being reported for 11 days? There seemed to be, at least on social media, for whatever that's worth, some real questions as to why potentially reporters in the Bay Area may have known some of this information and held it back. What do you think?
It's definitely weird, right? I mean, to the degree that he had the injuries that he suffered, and I don't know if there's footage out there yet or anything, but I haven't seen the accident, or I don't even know exactly what the reports are, but based on the injuries he had, it was clearly a pretty significant injury. And because he's a high profile person, it's borderline stunning that it didn't get out. I mean, even if the local reporters knew, where's TMZ? Like, why, how does nobody have this? And makes you wonder, okay, wait, where's the police sort of willing to play ball here and help cover it up? I don't know. It's very odd. I will throw in this conspiracy just for fun since we're here. Obviously, we've all kind of looked at Brandon Ayuk side eyes this whole several weeks, but remember he got his warrant out in California for his arrest because of the speeding incident that he had when he was filming himself speeding, occurred on June 3rd. So right after the Niners chose, like at the point where people thought the Niners could release him. And it was weird because the Ayuk did that months ago prior. Like, so why did it come out at that moment? Right. There was some conspiracy theory of, is this the police helping the 49ers by putting this out there now? So if he wants to come, it's going to be potentially problematic. I in and of itself, I don't think too much about it. But when you factor in, wait, Kyle Shanahan just had this accident and nobody reported it or knew about it for over a week. That's, like I said, I mean, forget the local reporters. What about all the other people who typically get these types of stories, like TMZ or whatever?
No,
so,
100%.
Very
it is definitely odd that literally 11 days people went by without any reporting on Kyle Shanahan being involved in a very serious car accident where he has a severe concussion, 40 stitches in his face, and broken bones everywhere, and isn't going to be able to participate. And by the way, help me with this because maybe I'm wrong, but was it John Lynch who broke the news during his press conference over the weekend, or was the news already broken by the time he took the podium?
Oh, that I'm not positive. I feel like it was maybe broken by the time he took the podium, but not positive. I mean,
the two things didn't happen with a full day in between. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. I saw one of the reporters, Tim Kawakami, who's like been long time columnist out there. Yeah. He apparently, I think he was getting grief from Mike Florio about why reporters seemed to maybe know things and then didn't put it out there. He said that, or he tweeted that he heard something about it. I think it was like the night before, but they didn't, only knew something had happened. It didn't exactly know what, and it's not always appropriate to just put something out there if you don't have the full details, especially if you're going to talk about somebody's health and all that. So so I don't know exactly when that happened, but I feel like it came out right before Lynch spoke. But yeah, very very, very weird times for the Niners as well. The Ayuk thing is pretty minor now, I think it's considered compared to the Shanahan situation.
All right. I'll finish up by asking you what I asked callers in the first hour of the show, and that is to define a successful season. So the season is a success in 2026 if what? And I'll just give you what my answer was. I had two parts to it. I had number one, they go to the playoffs. And number two, Jaden Daniels has a great season, which is marked by health throughout. So he plays healthy, doesn't get injured, plays in 17 games or the number of games that he needs to play in. And at the end of his season, we're right back, or most of us are right back to where we were, at the end of 2024, believing that the franchise has an elite level franchise quarterback at the helm for years to come. That was my definition. Playoffs, and then Jaden has a great season marked by health and, obviously great play. How would you define it?
Yeah, I would start with the Jaden Daniels part. Obviously, this is the season that we're talking about and focused on, and they're coming off a miserable year. So, how do they rebound this year? But when you have a quarterback with his talent that we've seen, you have a chance to win any game. And we are all looking at this as Washington has a chance to win any game for the next decade, right? Because of this guy. And if he's unable to stay healthy, or he just doesn't look, like the guy we saw as a rookie, now all of a sudden it starts to spiral like, oh no, where is this thing going? We'll hear all the RG3 stuff, yada, yada. So yes, I'm with you. I think Jaden Daniels, and to be clear, I'm not worried about it. The injuries, we'll just have to see, but I'm not worrying about the player. I think he's still very good. I think he'll be fine.
Right.
All that. And in terms of the team, I hear you on the playoffs. I mean, obviously that would be great. I just think that, again, when you're in a sport where the literal bounce of the ball can just, change everything, or the rest.
Yeah, there's context around everything.
Yeah, but so I would just say, be competitive. I don't mean this in like a participation trophy way. I just mean that last year it's not that they lost, they were just non-competitive in a lot of those losses. So they've got to show that, hey, we're something, a force to be reckoned with. If the losses come, all right, well, that's a bummer, and we can go from there if Dan Quinn's the right guy or whatever. But as long as they are, in the mix, competitive, I think that's, to me, after what we saw last year, I'm going to take that. Obviously, the playoffs will be great. There's only 7 spots, and everybody has these goals. But, yeah, start with Jaden Daniels and then kind of go from there.
All righty. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Always, man. See ya.
Ben Standig, everybody. Somebody sent me a really good July sports question. I'm going to ask all of you the question when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, we are live, a broadcast on video every day on our Team 980 YouTube channel. All of our sports conversation on this show, especially when we're talking training camp coverage from Ashburn, on Team 980 is presented by Xfinity. Score the most reliable Wi-Fi. One price, 5 years, guaranteed. Xfinity. Imagine that. Thank you to Rex for sending me this. Rex sent me a tweet from Sam Block, who works for ESPN. I think he's a behind-the-scenes ESPN person. On X, it's the Block Spot. And he said, this would make for a very interesting question. And Sam's question was, name one team that is a lock to win a championship in the next 5 years. Any sport. Name one team that is a lock to win a championship in the next 5 years. Any sport. Now, we're talking on this show about the 4 major pro sports leagues. And you can even go college football and college basketball if you'd like. There was a team that immediately came to mind for me. Actually, 2 teams that immediately came to mind for me. And it also, I think, for me, reinforces my belief that the NBA is the most predictive league. The NFL, a team that's a lock to win a championship in the next 5 years in that league where it's essentially week to week is really hard. Now, Mahomes being where he is, and they've won, already several, so you might say that. But the NHL tends to be a bit of a crapshoot. Major League Baseball can be a little bit of that as well, even though the Dodgers obviously are in the midst of a potential dynastic run. And look, that's an answer that isn't a bad answer at all. But the first 2 teams that came to mind for me in terms of one team that is a lock to win a championship in the next 5 years, the first team that came to my mind was Oklahoma City. I think that they'd be sitting on 2 straight titles had Jalen Williams not been hurt in the playoffs this year. I think that they would have gotten by San Antonio, and they would have been much more difficult for the Knicks to beat in a best of 7. But the other team that I thought of was San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama. I think, one of those 2 teams is going to win a title in the next 5 years in the NBA. But my answer to this is the Oklahoma City Thunder. There's actually a college football team that I'd be surprised if they didn't win a national championship in the next 5 years, but I'll leave that answer for the end if nobody else comes up with it. But I think it's Oklahoma City. I think a lot of people would say the Spurs to this question. But that's my answer. Oklahoma City is going to win a title in the next 5 years. Max, what is your answer?
Give me the Dodgers. Give me the LA Dodgers. That's going to be my pick. I mean, they won 3 of the last 5. The back-to-back champs going for a 3rd title in a row. I mean, it's hard not to say the Dodgers with how inflated their payroll is and how many stars they have on that team.
Right.
So yeah, give me LA.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a good one. Remember, the first one that they won was the COVID shortened year.
Of course.
In 2020. But they've won the last 2, and they are do they currently have the best record in baseball? Do they? It's up there. It's either them or the Brewers. One of those 2 teams has the best record. Currently, the Dodgers barely by a half game have a better overall record than the Brewers. So the best record belongs to the Dodgers. The Dodgers is a good one. I just think that baseball can change quickly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And the postseason, because they're short series after a long season, they tend to be a little bit more random, but not the last 2 years with the Dodgers for sure. All right, phone lines are open, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Who's a lock to win a championship in the next 5 years? Name one team in any of the 4 major pro sports or college football, college basketball, if you want. I don't want, an MLS team. I can't even answer to that. And I don't think that there's a lock team in that league anyway.
Do not say Inter Miami would be Messi's team, but that's the only one I'll hear out.
Have they won it? Did they win the title last year with him?
That's a great question.
Well, it's not a great question. It's ignorance on display.
Still a great question. They are the reigning champs.
They are the reigning champs?
Yes. December 6th. They won 3-1 over the
last
Vancouver
year his
Whitecaps.
first year playing in Miami?
Yes, it was. 2025 was.
And they won the title.
Look at him.
Okay. Name one team in the 4 major pro sports or the 2 major college sports that is a lock to win a championship in the next 5 years. 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. This guy, Sam Block, who works for ESPN, I don't know what he does for ESPN, but Rex sent me this thing and said this would be a good question for the show, especially in July. Sam Block tweeted out, name one team that is a lock to win a championship in the next 5 years. By the way, he's got 1,500 responses to it. I just started scrolling through them, and over 672,000 views. Max's answer was the Dodgers. My answer was Oklahoma City. In scrolling through, the Dodgers are the number one answer. There's a lot of Spurs. There is some OKC. There's a lot of Chicago Bears. Really? But the Dodgers would appear not, this is not an official audit of the answers, but the Dodgers would appear to be the number one answer. We've got our poll up for the day, our Team 980 Waldorf Honda poll question of the day. Of the following leagues, which is easiest to predict a champion? I think it's the NBA, personally. In fact, I don't even think it's close. I think the NBA is the easiest to predict a championship or a champion. But because best of seven and the nature of usually the most talented teams, the best teams win. And by the way, some of you may say Philadelphia now. Our Twitter poll of the day, driven by Waldorf Honda. It all starts with a click, waldorfhonda.com. Let's start with Jay and Reston, because Jay has an answer that I thought of too. Go ahead, Jay.
Hey, Kevin,
Jay,
I'm going with Ohio State football. I'm sorry, give me 1 second.
Yep.
Is that better?
Yep, I think so. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm going with Ohio State football. I just feel like they're just loaded every year. They don't play in the SEC, so it seems like they've got a guaranteed 9-10 wins a year. They get the best receivers, the best defense. They just get a quarterback that's half decent. I don't see how they don't win a championship within the next 5 years, if not 2 or 3.
Yeah, I thought of. Thanks for the call. I'm going to let you go because there's still some echoing behind you. But I thought of Ohio State as well. I thought of the first names that came to mind were OKC, San Antonio, and Ohio State football. I'd be shocked if Ohio State isn't playing for a national championship at least once in the next 5 years. I mean, they are typically at the very top of the recruiting classes year in and year out. Worst case, like top 5, top 10. They just have overwhelming talent. So does LSU, so does Notre Dame, so does Alabama, so does Georgia. I mean, there are a lot of teams, but just it seems like Ohio State is always an abundance of talent. Let's go to MJ. MJ, go ahead.
Yeah, this is kind of a deep cut, but there is a team no one's talking about that has a championship window, and I'm going to say the Baltimore Ravens. And of course, because I wish I could say Commanders, but the Ravens, they have the talent, and I know that they don't have that much time with Lamar and Derrick Henry and the like to try and get a winning contention window open. So I think now is the time to strike.
Yeah, I mean, they have, you're right about the window, but a lock to win a championship in the next 5 years when Lamar Jackson has not played well in the playoffs at all, pretty much. I mean, he was okay 2 years ago when they got to the AFC championship game, but then he didn't play well. He was all right, I guess, in the loss to Buffalo the year that followed, which was 24. I mean, they're in a window, but they're far from a lock to win a title. I think it'd be hard to pick any NFL team. The league is just way too fickle. It's too unpredictable. It's too dynamic. It changes way too much and way too quickly. But I appreciate the answer. Let's go to Mark in Largo. Mark, give me a team in any of the 4 professional sports. You can pick a college team too that is a lock to win a championship in the next 5 years.
You know something, Kevin? You're absolutely right about the NFL. It's hard to pick the NFL team, so that cancels my NFL answer, which brings me to the number one answer I was going to pick. Washington Wizards, 2028, will beat the Oklahoma City in their 50th anniversary, beating the OKC, and they'll go back-to-back, 28 and 29 champions. They got
Put it in the file, Mark.
You know, the best part of you is the delivery sounds so certain and so 100% bought in serious. So I love the conviction, but they are hardly a lock to win a championship unless you're right. I mean, let me give the people the basis for this. You think Alex Sarr is better than Victor Wembanyama. So there is that.
Oh, Jesus Christ, a better low post player than Victor Wembanyama, which you agree with. So that being said, did anyone see New York winning the title this time last year? No.
What did you say?
NBA, what did anyone see New York winning the title this time last year?
No, and the NBA's had 8 straight different winners. So that'll help you. That'll help support you. Yes.
This is actually good for the league. This is great.
Oh
for the
yeah.
league. I think we are due for a title run. We are due to win a title.
Due ain't got nothing to do with it.
Mark. That's the problem.
Due ain't got nothing to do with it. Did you change your position on Alex Sarr? Did you just modify it to a better low post player? Because I am pretty sure about 3 weeks ago you told me Alex Sarr was going to be better than Victor Wembanyama.
That was June 9th.
Maturity. Because of his maturity. Right
June
now,
9th, you said
is
it.
much better. Right now, his maturity is much better than Wemby's. Wemby has a bunch of height. Okay?
I know. Well,
but
there's no doubt about that.
He's a bunch of height, and that's fine. But I don't think San Antonio, I don't think they're going to win a title with just him. That's just me. I don't think they're going to win a title with just him. And I think Washington will have an easier road once we get through what we got to get through this year and next year. We get there in 28, we play OKC, and everything will be great for us, man. We win that title. It'll be 50 years of winning the title.
All right. Yeah, that'd be awesome. The 50-year anniversary of the 78 title. Let's go get it done. I would be thrilled. By the way, that would mean next year they're going to win the title because it would be the 2027-2028 season, right? So
that year.
This year is the stepping stone year to the first of back-to-back titles. All right. Thank you.
This year
as always.
To the playoffs.
Yeah. All right. Bernie in Potomac Falls. Bernie, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. Good to talk to you. What would be awesome if the Wizards won it in 28 is, the last time they won, we watched it on tape delay. I'd like to see it real time. That would be fun. Because it was, I'm sure you remember that. Anyway, I think it's the Dodgers because they have the payroll and the ownership that no matter what happens, they're retooling. They're the Yankees of 5 or 6 years ago, 10 years ago, that they're going to pluck the free agents. I wouldn't be surprised if Adley Rutschman ends up as a Dodger. And you're also right about basketball. I know that we've had 8 teams, but nobody's been a massive surprise because over 82 games, talent rise to the top. In football, you just have to be hot for a little stretch.
And then 4 out of 7 in the playoffs, of course.
Where you have the home field, Super Bowls at a neutral field, and it's easy, and that's what makes it always gives me hope for the Commanders. So, but good topic, but I'd like to think the Capitals going to sneak one in before Ovechkin. I think we're going to be title counting a little bit, Kevin. So I know
Bernie,
you got a
Bernie, by the way, is the best.
Listen.
Bernie, thank you for a couple weeks ago. And by the way, I'm going to be at Merriweather tomorrow night. Are you going to be there? Did Bernie hang up?
Bernie did hang up.
I didn't ask Bernie for tickets to go see Muse tomorrow night, but I am going. All right. Well, there you go. I'm looking at the list of NBA. I mean, since Golden State went back-to-back and won 3 of 4, we've had Toronto, the Lakers in the bubble, the Bucks, the Warriors, the Nuggets, the Celtics, OKC, and the Knicks. And when he said that none of them have been a surprise, I would say Golden State beating Boston was a surprise. I would say Toronto in 2019 beating the Warriors was a surprise. And by the way, they weren't even supposed to beat Milwaukee in the Eastern Conference Finals. And then they got the break with Durant's injury in the finals. The Nuggets weren't that much of a surprise. The Celtics winning in 24, not much of a surprise. I think I think we were surprised by OKC's dominance until the finals when they went 7 with Indiana, but they were the best regular season team through 82. The Knicks were a surprise, no doubt. All right, that's it for the day. Back tomorrow, everybody. Is Chris next?
He sure is.
Rooster's next.